Welcome to the Elaborate Topics podcast, where we focus on lab-specific strategies for medical laboratory professionals. We're proud to be the healthcare detectives that work behind the scenes to get the results needed to influence medical decisions. Let's grow together and jump right into the lab.
Hi, friends. Here we go for another week for another awesome episode. I hope you all are ready because we're ready. It is a roundtable week. Hey, co-hosts, are you all ready for this awesome episode?
I am. Thank you, Taiwana.
I am.
Awesome. Well, guess I know you were probably figuring, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to give you some tips on some strategic tips on getting ready for your next virtual or in-person conference so that you can make the best of your experience. We want you to be able to have the information that you need before conference, during conference, and after conference so that you can get all of the experience that you desire. Before we jump into it and get too deep into it, make sure you share this broadcast out. Share it with a friend. Sharing is caring. Make sure that you continue to tune in week after week. We are on directimpactbroadcasting.com. We are on Vine Stream on LabVine's platform. We're on your favorite podcast platform. So wherever you want to listen to us, you will be able to hear an episode. And we are nearing the 200 mark. So we will get to the 200 mark real soon. So I'm sure there are topics that you want to hear that we might have already covered. So make sure you go check it out. But then also let us know your thoughts about the topic that you heard. So let's get into it. I know you're getting ready for a conference. Maybe it's your first conference. Maybe it's your second or third. But here we're going to give you these practical tips that you can use, some of which you might not have thought about before as you were preparing for your conference. But hopefully we give you something that you can use regardless if the conference is virtual or if it is a live conference. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pre-conference planning so that you can be able to identify what it is that you desire from that conference. So get your pen out because this is going to be helpful for you to know before you get ready to go for the conference. So I am assuming you have already decided on the conference that you want to attend. And once you have that in mind and already registered for, let's give you a few tips for you to plan. First, you want to set clear learning objectives. So before the conference, you want to identify what specific knowledge, skills, or insights you want to gain. You want to set clear learning objectives that will align with your professional goals that you desire to obtain. And these objectives will guide you through your conference experience so that you can pick the right sessions, go and hear the right speakers and topics that are most relevant to your development. So when you think about your clear learning objectives, an example might be something like you want to improve your management skills. And a tip for that would be breaking down into smaller subtopics of what you actually want to learn. So it might be topics around communicating with influence, or it could be topics around getting buy-in. So setting those clear learning objectives. You want to research speakers and sessions. So you should get a program book or a speaker lineup. You want to thoroughly review the conference agenda and speaker lineup, looking for those sessions that align with your learning objectives. You can research the background, expertise, and previous work of the speakers to prioritize the most insightful and relevant sessions. So if you know that there is a certain speaker, and I'll just throw out Dr. Rodney Rhodey because I see him on all the platforms speaking at everything. But if you know that you want to hear Dr. Rhodey, then you want to check and see what other events have he spoken at? What is some of his published work out there? What other topics do he cover? So that this will give you deeper insight and some relevant discussion points as it relates to the speaker in their session. You want to create your personalized schedule. So based off of your learning objectives for this particular conference, you want to outline any sessions that you want to make sure that you go to and make sure they align with your goals and offer you a real well-rounded experience. So there are going to be tons of opportunities for workshops. There are probably breakouts. There could be certain tracks depending on how large the conference is. So you want to make sure that you make yourself a schedule. So depending on the conference, they might have an app where you're able to go in and select those sessions so that you can start those sessions. You can go ahead and plan out your agenda. So those are things that you want to do. Also want to plan for networking. Conferences are not only about learning from sessions, but also about networking with peers, experts, and potential collaborators. And you never know, you might find a potential future employer as well. So identify key individuals you want to connect with and plan to attend networking events or discussion sessions or roundtables where you can engage in meaningful conversations. A lot of the conferences, especially if it's a live conference, will have exhibit halls, they will have poster presentations, they will have, of course, breakfast or lunch or some kind of meal. So those are all opportunities to network. So when you're planning for your networking, you can identify colleagues from your institution attending the conference or within the same professional society or other common interests. And then also using social media platforms or the conference apps to connect with attendees before the event. So many of these conferences, if they have an app, they will have all of the people that are registered inside of the app, and you can go in and you can connect with them even before you leave your home, before the conference even starts. So take advantage of those networking opportunities. I have met some of my best friends and best collaborators and partners via networking and attending these conferences. You want to prepare any questions. So come prepared with thoughtful questions for your speakers and presenters. This will not only enhance your understanding of the topic, but also allow you to actively engage during Q&A sessions or discussions. So having those questions, you have to think you're in a room with these experts, with these presenters who have the knowledge that you want. And that is a great time for you to be able to ask the question that you have. Having been a speaker and presenter, there's nothing worse than finishing up your talk and then nobody has any questions. It's like, well, was the information good? Was it not good? Or did I do just that great of a job that there were no questions? So prepare for questions, and that will give you an opportunity to be able to engage with the speaker. You want to gather any necessary materials that you might need. So when you think materials, this could be note-taking materials, it could be your laptop or any kind of printed handouts that you might need. Also think about, which sometimes people forget, your notebook, pen, like I said, laptop, a charger. So if it's an on-site conference, you might want to have a charger for your computer, your iPad or tablet, your phone, business cards. So you want to make sure that you have business cards. So as you're networking, you're able to have those business cards where you're able to give them out. And if you don't have business cards, one of the popular things that people are doing is having a QR code or having some sort of link that people can go to, and it'll have your social media profiles, your email, your telephone number. So making sure that you have a way for people to communicate with you after the conference. If it's a live conference, and really if it's a virtual conference as well, you want to have some snacks because sometimes the days get long. So you want to have some snacks with you. A reusable water bottle. May not think about that either, but sometimes during a long day and you're going from session to session, you want to have a reusable water bottle so that you can fill it up throughout the day. And if you're going to a live conference, comfortable clothing and shoes, but make sure they are appropriate for the event. But different conferences, especially depending on where it is at, you could be doing a ton of walking. So you want to make sure that you are prepared to meet the needs of the conference. I can remember going to one of ASCP's annual conference in Las Vegas. And if you've ever been to a conference in Las Vegas, you're going to be doing a ton of walking, and it's going to be very hot because more than likely you're going to be staying very far. And then you have to account for it's very hot outside, but then you get into the hotels and it's very cold. So thinking about a sweater, thinking about those kind of things. You also want to set realistic expectations. So while conferences offer a lot of valuable insights, it's also important to set realistic expectations of the conference. So you might not be able to attend every session or engage with every speaker that you want to engage with. So you have to prioritize your learning objectives and focus on quality over quantity, because there will be a lot of sessions, but sometimes the ones that you want to go to are at the same time. So you want to think about that as well. If it is a virtual conference, you want to make sure that you familiarize yourself with the virtual platform. So with the opportunity to attend virtual conferences, there are many different platforms being used, and Zoom is not the only one being used. So you can find yourself on Zoom, you can find yourself on AirMeet, you can find yourself on Cvent events. I mean, there are many different ones. So if the conference is virtual, make sure that you are familiar with the platform, understand how to navigate through different sessions, access the materials that you need, any kind of surveys, make sure you understand and know how to participate in discussions and how to interact with other attendees, and making sure that you are familiar with the common things, the chat feature, the question and answer box, how to upload your photo, how to update your information. And then the last thing that I will say as you are preparing for your conference experience is to stay flexible. So conference schedules can change, unexpected opportunities might arise that might have you change your plans based on the new information or the interesting last minute sessions that could have been added, or sometimes talks, because at these conferences, the talks are planned 6 to 9 months in advance sometimes. And then sometimes either the speaker can no longer show up or they're not available. So just be flexible that sometimes the schedule do change. So as you get ready for your conference, your pre-conference planning is very important to set the foundation for a successful and fulfilling conference, having those clear objectives, researching the sessions you want to attend, creating your schedule, preparing for networking, which is super important, and making sure that you are well equipped. And then it will allow you to really have a great conference and be able to grow. So those are the things that I wanted to share about the pre-conference planning. I know you didn't think so much went into going to a conference, but it do if you want to maximize your experience. And I know Stephanie is going to talk about, okay, so you've done all this pre-planning. Now, what do you do as you get ready to go to the conference and are at the conference?
Thank you, Taiwana. Those were some great tips, and I wrote a couple of those down myself. She's absolutely right. Make sure when you are headed to your conference that you are following the conference on social media. Many conferences will use a hashtag. So right now, as we record this, we are approaching the 2023 annual conference for ASCP, and there is a lot of buzz on social media about that particular conference, for example. And so one thing I encourage people to do pre-conference is follow the hashtag. And that'll give you additional information about things you can anticipate for the conference, maybe things that are popping up, or maybe even interesting people that will be there. So one thing that I like to do when I get to the conference is use the hashtag, but then also follow the hashtag prior to the meeting. One of the most important tips that I have for you while you're at the conference, and this is for if this is a live conference, but with all of this travel, all of this walking, all of this preparation, definitely sleep. So Taiwana already gave you some great plans on how to personalize your schedule every day to make sure that you're finding programs that meet your needs, but also plan your day, especially if you're traveling to an area that has a different time zone. Traveling and sometimes different diet, different foods can definitely mess up your routine that you might have in your normal environment. And things like lack of sleep or a different diet can sometimes affect your mood. And you want to make sure that you are bright and open and in optimal condition to get the most that you can out of the conference. So basically, like I'm saying, just make sure that you plan some time in your day to get back to your hotel room and recharge and rejuvenate yourself after every day. One thing that I have learned to do, and it's been a great tip for myself, and I still use it personally. It sounds a little silly, but prep simple conversation starters, because I don't think I still am the best, but I definitely haven't always been the best at just starting simple conversations. And you will meet at conferences, whether virtually or in person, a lot of new people. If you're the type of person who is a typical laboratory introvert, I encourage you to set a goal to at least try to meet 3 new people at a conference, but start different, in your head conversation starters, or find different conversation starters that you can practice and kind of have your own little elevator pitch on how to introduce yourself, where you're from, what you do, what you plan to get out of the conference, little things like that. I am horrible at remembering names. And so when I meet someone, one trick that I try to use is once I meet the person, I try to immediately use their name in a sentence. For instance, if Taiwana were to introduce herself to me, I would say, okay, you're Taiwana from Cincinnati. Wow, great. I have an aunt that lives there, Taiwana. And that just that really helps me program that person's face with their name. So in the event that I see them again in the conference, I can remember their name. And while we're talking about people, again, it seems silly and small, but when you get to these lunches or snack times, eat with people. Don't be the person sitting at the table by yourself with your plate, looking around on your phone. No, go out on a limb. Everybody is there to network. Everybody is there to meet other people. And so sit with other people. If you see a person sitting beside themselves, with themselves, politely ask, do you mind if I sit with you? Put yourself out there to make sure that you are networking and taking advantage of the connections that you can make with the individuals and as well as the speakers. I have taken Taiwana's advice before and prepared for meetings that had interesting speakers, prepared meaningful questions, participated in the session, and then taken the opportunity to connect with those speakers afterwards. And many of those speakers are, again, regular people just like you. In fact, many of you could probably be speakers if you just haven't submitted a proposal or an abstract to speak. But the speakers are people too. And they, take it from me, from speaking at conferences, I love when people come up to me after, the conference and talk about the session or ask additional questions or give additional feedback about the session. So don't be afraid to go up and connect with the speaker. Another piece of advice during the conference, whether you're virtual or you're in person, try your best to be as present as possible. Do your best. I know that sometimes work obligations, or especially if you're traveling, personal obligations can get in the way, but to the best of your ability, try to put away your smartphone and be as present as possible in the meeting. And that'll, again, help you get the most out of it. It is difficult when you're doing a conference virtually. And one of the advantages to being virtually in a conference is you can multitask. But there's so much research out there that shows that multitasking is actually not the most efficient practice. Actually, focusing all your attention on one single task and doing that well is actually more effective nowadays. And so definitely do that. And finally, one thing that I love to do while I'm at a conference is connect with people prior to going, as safely as you feel so, perhaps post that you're going to a specific conference, but definitely while you're there, start connecting with people that you might know or might also be going to the conference that you are previously affiliated with, so you can make those connections. Listening to Taiwana talk about Las Vegas, I'm reminded of a final tip, which is definitely, if you can, try to stay at the hotel or the venue where the conference is happening. There are so many times where I have tried to go the more economic route. It did not turn out well for me. And so as much as possible, if you are going to an in-person conference, try to stay in that environment where the conference is happening, or at least in as close of proximity as possible. And those are really all the tips that I have for you. If you're going to a conference that you see me at, definitely connect with me. I'd love to shake hands with you and exchange cards with you, and connect with you on LinkedIn. If you do, though, everybody have your handles ready. Have those QR codes that Taiwana was talking about. The best thing to do when you meet a person is say, oh, let's connect on Twitter or LinkedIn. And I hate when people just say, well, I don't know my LinkedIn. I haven't used my LinkedIn in so long. They have your social media handles ready and get them up to date so that we can connect and and stay connected. Taiwan laughing at me. So those are all the tips that I have for you. And Taiwana has helped you prepare for the conference. I've given you some tips on how to stay present and what to do while you're at the conference. And Taiwana is going to tie it up with a bow on when
Lona?
you get back home or when your conference is over, what you should do to keep that momentum from the conference going.
Okay, guys. So Lona will help you to do the post conference. So you guys gave some great tips. I learned a lot. I was writing notes. Taiwana had a real comprehensive list of preparation, and I love that. So I'm going to quickly go into post-conference. And a lot of what you do post-conference actually start at pre-conference preparation. So having that goal for your conference is going to really help you after the conference. So like Taiwana was saying, what are your learning goals? So that will help you to choose some of the speakers who you're going to network with, according to what Stephanie was saying. So just after the conference, sometimes you're probably still at the conference. There are things that you can do to really make the best out of the conference. So you can just start by just writing a reflection of what you've learned, because it's so easy to forget. A lot of times they say that learning most of what you hear, you forget immediately afterwards. So you have to find ways in which to really solidify the learning. So the first thing I would do is just write a reflective summary after each session. Just write down your overall learning, or even during the session. What are some of the meaning that you got out of it, the key takeaways, and even make a plan on how you're going to either build on some of the things that you have learned, how you're going to actually use them. Another thing you can do immediately is just give feedback when they ask to the conference organizers, because that's going to help the speakers a lot. So if you really love a speaker, you got a lot from it, just write a great feedback when the survey comes out. So those are some immediate things that you can do. A lot of the others, when it comes to, say, following up or networking, just think about what speaker really intrigued you. You had your goal, you had your learning goals. For me, sometimes I want to learn about something that I'm curious about, not only in an area that I've been working in. Yes, I love to go to conferences that I can learn about quality and patient safety, but I'm usually sometime want to learn about things that I'm curious about. I'm always curious about value-based medicine. How can the lab fit into the big picture when it comes to healthcare and demonstrate value? So what are some of the speakers that intrigued you? After you set your learning goal and you listen to the speaker, you may want to follow up with that speaker. And when you do follow up, you can follow up based on their social media profile, either what you found out when you were doing your research. Like Taiwana said, a lot of the information is already there. Their contact information, their either LinkedIn or email, you probably got it there, or you got it during a breakout session, or you got it after they speak, they usually give you a contact information. So make sure you're writing that down so you have an opportunity to follow up. So when you do follow up, you want to let them know why. So was there something that you took away from the talk? Usually a good quote would be great. A speaker want to know that when they spoke, either you were listening or it made a difference. So if you can remember something specific about something that was valuable, when you reach out to them, let them know, and that will make a big difference. And then if you want to have follow-up questions, then like Tawana was saying, speakers like to know that you ask questions. You're curious. The subject matter is important to you. So if you have follow-up questions and they weren't answered during the conference, go ahead and ask those questions and share your interest on the subject. Start this dialogue. So if you're reaching out through social media, you're reaching out through LinkedIn, you want to make it an opportunity to start an ongoing dialogue. So you ask the questions, they get back to you, you give feedback, you really show your interest in the subject, especially if it's something that you're trying to learn more about or you want to deepen your knowledge. So really share your interest in the subject. And then just by having those dialogue, you can get an opportunity to know what that speaker may be interested in, and maybe there's something that you can help them with. So you find out their interest. Is there an opportunity for you to help them with resources or any knowledge that you have? And then use that opportunity to build long-term relationship, or just continue to learn from each other, or even continue to kind of get into their network. So you're building these relationships for either longer term opportunities. So then for you, or even their example where I saw Stephanie, when we went to a conference and she listened to a speaker, I think it was Melody. Melody had a great presentation. I was so impressed because that was something that I was interested to when it comes to interdisciplinary teams and interdisciplinary relationship. And you can invite them to either speak or present at a conference that you know, or speak at an opportunity that you may have for them, or on a podcast like Stephanie invited Melody to speak on Elaborate Topic Podcast. So you're building relationship, you're giving them opportunities, and you're giving value. So you're not just getting, but you're also returning value to them in those scenarios. Also, it's important to, whenever a speaker is sharing something, sometimes they share free gifts. Take advantage of that because they love that. There may be a free course. It may be an opportunity. I know LabVine sometime will share their free resources. Take opportunity of those scenarios when you're in a conference. Another thing that you can do, you can utilize or solidify your learning. So if you went to a workshop, for me, I usually go to a lot of post-conference workshops, especially when there was lab quality confab. They would do a lot of workshops, so you can learn things. You may go to a workshop, they may be talking about communications, or it may be something on validation or calibration or cap inspection or lean or process improvement. Once you go back, try that out. So you go back and you take it back to your facility, you try that out. And once you're trying it out, if there gaps or something that you need to know more, that's another opportunity to network with the speaker, reach out to the speaker, and they'll be happy to know that you're trying out something that they introduced to you. I remember trying out this process. It was a rapid change project opportunity, and I was getting ready for doing my first lean project. And I decided, let me do this rapid change project. And that will probably take me about 4 weeks. And while I was doing it, I was working with the facilitator, and I built a great relationship with the facilitator, and they were extremely happy that I was sharing their concept, because sometimes people create concept and they want that to be shared. So they were really happy. And sometimes just teaching, you can solidify your learning by going back and teaching something that you have learned. Or you can follow up, you can do research. If there are any knowledge gap, you can do that. And the speakers want to know that the information that they share, they're being shared and they're moving from lab to lab. So that's a great opportunity for you to learn, and also an opportunity for the speaker for their knowledge to be shared. Another part is, after you're learning and you're sharing, you can build expertise. So from what you've learned, you can start writing blogs, you can start writing articles, you can just share your reflection. Sometime you can say, okay, this is what I learned, and just share a reflection as a blog. And that is kind of building your expertise. And at some point, you can submit a proposal for that next conference. That will kind of build your confidence from your learning and from your networking. So there are so many opportunities, so many value that you can get from a conference, and just by using the time after the conference to either solidify your learning, network with people, reflect on what you've learned, and then use that to move as also another speaker. So, ladies, anything here that you think that would be something that you'd want to add?
Yeah, I think you mentioned a lot of great points, Alona, as somebody gets finished with their conference and solidifying their learning. One of the things is, as you and Stephanie were talking, it made me think too, and I've been to many conferences, is that I feel like not one of them is necessarily a one shoe fit all type of a conference, meaning that you're going to get everything that you want from that one conference. So that was when I say stay flexible and be open to different experiences. Just know that, you may have to go to several conferences to be able to have those learning experiences in the different areas in which you desire. Also, the information that we're giving you while we are lab professionals, understand that you can use these same tips to other conferences that you may go to that may not directly be in the laboratory. Maybe it's healthcare healthcare related, but not necessarily laboratory. So make sure you are keeping yourself open to those opportunities as well, but attend conferences that meet your needs based off of your learning objectives. For these conferences, your employer may pay, they may not. So just understand that that too could be an investment on your part, and understand that being willing to make the investment to further your growth and development.
So, ladies, what have been some of the conferences that you have enjoyed and that you found a lot of value out of?
Well, there are several.
For
there,
me,
go ahead, Lona.
yeah, for me, I've enjoyed, especially recently, before we had a local ASCP almost every year. We used to have like a local conference in our area. Most of the states around this area would come together, and that was a great opportunity for me to network. For me, at that time, it was more a networking opportunity. There's a lot of learning that we had. But when you work in different hospitals around the region, and maybe for years you haven't seen people, you had that opportunity to network. But with time, once I started contributing more to the lab, I got involved in ASCLS and got involved in their leadership committee. And so we started going outside of town for conferences. And that, for me, I started to contribute in terms of presenting. And I got a lot out of it. So I realized I got a lot out of receiving, and I got a lot out of giving. And then later on, Lab Quality Confab was a big thing for me. Once I got into quality, I learned so much from Lab Quality Confab, a lot of the workshops that they did. So those were some of the main conferences for me, the ASCP, ACLS, and the Lab Quality Confab. Later on, I think almost everyone in our hospital, AACC was a big deal, especially for chemistry group. Most of our leaders have been either presidents or held role in AACC, so that they put a lot into going there. That was really beneficial, especially when it comes to the expo and the networking part of it. So I think those were the ones for me.
I think for me, I know that CLMA has partnered and been taken under the umbrella of ASCP, but previously, before that, I would get a lot of out of the CLMA conference, especially the vendor section, where you were really able to. I'm going to date myself, but back in the day, they brought the trucks of all the instruments and all of those things to the CLMA conference. And I think right now, just because of the volunteer involvement that I have, I get a lot out of the ASCP annual conference. But I would say, for the past 3 years, the Elaborate Topics podcast virtually has presented at the ELMC Squared conference, the Emerging Laboratory Manager Conference that is offered through ASCLS. And although that conference is focused and geared towards emerging laboratory leaders or early laboratory leaders, I actually get a lot of information out of the sessions over those 2 days. It's a very content-packed conference, and usually a lot of quality information that comes from that meeting. Being that I work at an academic hospital that's affiliated with an academic program, CLEC has been very helpful for some of my team to go and partner with some of the people from over at the school and just get a lot of information about how we can partner with schools to enhance the educational program for MLS programs. So, Taiwana, what about you?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the stage that I'm at in my career, on what has been more impactful at different times. So ASCP definitely has had a strong role in my development in my career. So I do enjoy the ASCP annual meeting. Since we have been connected with LabVine, I've also enjoyed their laboratory seasonal school and the transformational seasonal school. So LabVine's virtual conference. And I think the reason why I like that conference is a 3-day conference is that it's international. So you have scientists from all over in various different laboratories that attend that one as well. And then previously, when CLMA was standalone, we would have the smaller meetings in our particular area. So those were nice. ASCLS have those state meetings as well. So I have been to several of those, and those have been pretty impactful. So I like going to those. And then I also usually choose some sort of conference that is leadership based, not necessarily laboratory. So usually every year I'll go to the John Maxwell Leadership Conference. And then I also like the ACHE, the American College of Healthcare Executives Laboratory on Congress. So that gives you healthcare executives from all over the healthcare landscape that usually goes to that conference. And I like the hospital associations meeting. So usually each state will do a hospital associations meeting. So you're in the room with legal and diversity and human resources and nursing and physicians. So you're getting information as it relates to different stakeholders in the healthcare landscape. So I usually try to mix a few of the conferences. So I might do a lab and a healthcare or something like that. So that's what I tend to do and have found enjoyment from. I did, as we were preparing for this conference, I did find some of the pretty big ones. We'll list them in the show notes. But as you are preparing for 2024, and a lot of these conferences are looking for speakers, so they have their request or proposal for speakers that are out. But the ASCLS Emerging Laboratory Managers Conference, which is virtual in January, and all of these are 2024. CLEC, the Clinical Laboratory Educators Conference, is in February in Las Vegas. The Lab Manager Summit, which is clinical, research, pharmaceutical, all different kind of lab managers, is in Denver, the end of April. Knowledge Lab, which is formerly by CLMA, but in conjunction with ASCP, will be in April. Executive War College, so for those lab and pathology professionals that are in leadership, that's in April in New Orleans. The APHL annual meeting, the Association of Public Health Laboratories, is in May. COLA, I know some of our laboratory team has been to the COLA Lab Enrichment Forum, which is in May. Excuse me. The American Society for Micro is in June. The ASCLS joint meeting is in July. AMT has an annual meeting, it's in July. The AACC, which is now the the Association of Diagnostics and Laboratory Medicine, they have a new name, is in July. ASCP's annual meeting next year is in September in Chicago. AABB, a lot of people like to go to that one. It's in October in Houston. And then the ASCLS Laboratory Legislative Symposium is in October. So if you haven't been to that, I went to that last year and it was a great experience. So those are some of the larger conferences. Of course, there are state conferences and regional conferences, but if you have not been to any lab conferences, I would check these out and put it on your list.
Thank you so much, Tawana. Great. I think that's a great resource that, so make sure you're going on to directimpactbroadcasting.com. And even if you're listening to this on other podcast platform, that should be in the show notes. So Thank you so much for listening. I know this should be some real good information. So share it out with others, with your friends, so that they can benefit from this. And as I said, you can listen to this episode on directimpactbroadcasting.com or any of your favorite podcast platform, or on LabVine. We're on LabVine. We are on Vine Stream. Once you go on, you can register for free and you can listen to us on Vine Stream. And you can also join our Facebook group or LinkedIn group and just give us your input. Let's have a discussion there. We do share our episodes there, and we share other information there. And we'd want for you to jump over and join us there, so we can have discussions and you can ask about things that you want to listen to, any subjects you want to listen to, and you can also submit requests to be a guest on the show. Just jump on to directimpactbroadcasting.com and you can submit a guest request, and you can email us too. We have an email address at elaboratetopics@directimpactbroadcasting.com. So this was a pleasure for us to share with you. And until next week, every week we have a new episode every Tuesday. So once you subscribe, you'll get notification. So please do so. And thanks, and have a great one.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Elaborate Topics, where your hosts discussed relevant strategies for laboratory professionals. Please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and listen to us on directimpactbroadcasting.com. Stay tuned for another episode with information you can use to excel in your laboratory career.